Good morning, everybody. We're going to be talking about the Main Street America Annual Assessment. That, of course, as the name says, is done annually. We always do it towards the end of the year. You'll notice when you get into the online platform that you may see other dates. We put in what our due date is, but other states have different due dates for that. But just realize that we'll be telling you sharing with you what the due date is for Missouri and that sort of thing. We're going to go through how to fill out the assessment, some best practices with that. I've got Ben White here. He's going to help me with the presentation. And then we also have Julie Turnipseed here with our staff. She's going to be providing assistance with this process down the road also. So we've got a full team here today. We're going to go ahead and jump in and start talking about the assessment. So the annual assessment was put together with National Main Street. It's been decades old, but it was revamped a few years ago, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But it comes in a couple sections. The first part is the self-assessment, and that's what you do in your local community, looking at your organization, looking at your partners, how you function as a Main Street program with your committees, your board of directors. So it's that internal review. Those of you that maybe work for larger companies, sometimes you do that in a larger company, do kind of an audit of yourself. And it's a great time to look at both the successes that you've had as an organization, but then also maybe those opportunities or areas that we need to focus on going forward. And in fact, we were on a new director call a week or two ago, and we had a community who said they're starting to plan for 2025, and we're already going through the assessment, looking at what things did they need to focus on in 2025. And I'll share this now just because it's a good place, but I'll share it with the background too, is that this is 40 years of Main Street America learning what makes a very impactful Main Street organization, and that's where these standards come from. So it's to help us be more efficient, more effective, more impactful in what we're doing as a Main Street organization. So there's that self-assessment piece that you guys will fill out. We've sent all of those out to all of our Main Street programs in Missouri. And the assessment is completed by all three tiers in Missouri. In Missouri, we have a tier system. So we have our accredited Main Street programs, which are the accredited by National Main Street and Missouri Main Street, the highest functioning Main Street programs. Most of those have been around for a decade or more. And then we have our associate tier, which is the group of folks that are working on becoming accredited. They're on their journey to being accredited. And then we have our affiliate tier, which are our newer Main Street programs that are still learning, building that foundation. So all of those folks received those assessments. The only group of folks that don't do the assessment are our newer community empowerment grant communities, just because they're not far enough along in their Main Street journey to do that yet. But if you've recently graduated or going to be graduating by the end of the year, you probably received the assessment from us. Ben helped identify those that would be ready to do that. So if you're on this webinar and have a question about that, I reach out to Ben or myself and we can help you with that. Those assessments then, after you're completed with those and submit those to us, those are reviewed by us at Missouri Main Street and then also by National Main Street, by Main Street America. And then there's a group of folks, we do 8 of these per year. The second phase of these assessments, 8 communities are visited in person by National Main Street and Missouri Main Street. So we'll talk about that schedule in a bit. It's mostly our accrediteds just because they have to continue to prove and demonstrate that they're at that level. So that's half of the folks. And then the other set are communities that are Main Street programs that are growing, and the on-site visit would be kind of the next part of their journey, helping them get that perspective from National Main Street. So I covered a little bit of the background, but like I said, it's 40 years of work by Main Street America in what makes an effective, efficient, impactful downtown Main Street program. And so all of that's kind of rolled into this assessment. Like I said, the assessment is decades old, but it was revamped and actually took a long time to revamp because all of the states were kind of using it differently. and Main Street America wanted to um, create a more continuity between the states and their assessments of their Main Street program. So, working with all of the other coordinating programs, state, county, and city coordinating programs, came up with this new format. And for Main Street directors that have been doing this for a while, in fact, we just had them together in Washington, Missouri for the quarterly workshop. The directors that had filled out the old survey, the old assessment, and the new one really like the new one much better. It's a better measure of the Main Street program and the work that they're doing. As opposed to just checking some boxes and sending in paperwork. So it really has evolved. We are an early adopter here in Missouri. This is really kind of our fifth year using it, I think. Last year brought a new piece to it, which was an online platform, which again is now being used nationwide. And this online platform makes it easy to gather that information, submit it to us, upload your documentation to support your scores. Makes it a lot easier than what it used to be, which was pen and paper, PDFs, all that stuff that you had to then upload and make sure we got it and the files weren't too big and all that stuff. So the platform just makes it a little more efficient. So this is our tier system, and I talked about that briefly. But why accreditation? Well, accreditation should be the goal of every Main Street program, and some programs, it's a journey of years. Some programs, it's a journey of maybe 10 years. But it should be the goal of every Main Street program because it's a badge of honor. It's proving that what you're doing in your downtown or in your district is having an impact. You are doing economic development in your Main Street program, in your community, and you're having results. And with that status, then also comes some additional services and dollars and resources from us at Missouri Main Street and National Main Street. So there's our tier list. You can see our biggest group is in that affiliate tier just because we've been growing our Main Street programs over the last 5 to 7 years. But we have had movement in the accreditation. We've had 2 more communities come into the accreditation piece. Joplin and Independence are our 2 newest accredited folks. And I think there's going to be some movement this year also after the assessments, particularly those with Main Street paid staff persons with executive directors. And that's going to be something that we'll talk about in January. Ben, I think this is you, right?
Yes. So we have 2 different annual assessments, one for the accredited and associate programs, and then the other for affiliate tiered programs. So you can go to the next one. I'll talk about the accredited and the associate one. So this is the hard copy of the accredited and the associate form. And so first you'll see on this, and this is also the same with the affiliate form, are some links to help you as you are going through this process. The first link that you're going to see on there is for the actual platform itself. That's that mainstreetreporting.org. So that's how you can access the assessment platform that was built, that Keith was talking about, that was built last year. The next link that's on there is a handbook for the platform itself. And so as you have questions on the platform, you can refer to this handbook. And then the next one is a website on the actual assessment itself. So where that takes you is a web page on the Main Street America site that talks about the assessment and talks about the platform.
I'm
The
going to back
last
up.
link.
I'm going to back up just a second because I threw Ben for a loop. This was actually my slide. But I wanted to share that these are the PDFs that were sent to all of you. So these are your assessment forms. It's a PDF. It's a document to use to guide you through the assessment process, but you're actually going to use an online platform to do your submission. We provide a paper copy just because it's easy to distribute it to the board of directors and share it with other folks that are going to help with the assessment. So realize you're not going to send us this This is
Mhm.
just a tool to use as you're submitting that. So my fault. Sorry about
Yeah,
that.
thanks. And then the last link that you're going to see on there goes to a YouTube link on the Main Street America site. And so these are videos provided by Main Street America on the assessment itself and then on the platform. So multiple videos to help you as you're going through this assessment. And so all of these resources are especially beneficial for new directors, new organizations the first time actually using and doing the assessment itself, or someone that's just their first time going through this process. Or if you've done the assessment in the past, but this is your first time being integrated into the online platform, all of these different links on this physical form here would be especially useful.
Yeah,
And I
and we're
also
not on today's video, we're not going to get into the nitty-gritty of how to use the platform because Main Street America did that already and they're the experts in the platform. We're just giving you an overview of the process to help you better prepare to do that submission.
Yep. Then before I get into the affiliate one, you'll see highlighted in yellow there. Keith talked about it a little bit earlier that this assessment is looking at your past work as a Main Street program. And so use this to take a look at that work that you've completed in 2024. This shouldn't be future facing. None of this should be, we're planning on doing this in 2025. This is what work did we complete in 2024. And so the deadline to submit that is January 5th. So now I'm going to get into the affiliate. So all of the links that we included in the accredited and the associate document are also included on here. And so the affiliate isn't necessarily going for accreditation itself, but if you are interested in that, contact Keith and he can take you through that process and what the organization needs to go through in order to become accredited. But really, the affiliate tiered assessment is more about trying to go through it and build capacity, grow partners in the community, and increase impact. It is what's our gauge as we're going through this process? What are we doing or not doing as a Main Street program? And so it allows you to plan for the future, plan future programming, because as Keith mentioned, these are all tactics that successful Main Street programs have used over the past 40 plus years. And so it's taking a look at maybe we didn't quite score ourselves as high as we think we should in this area because we're not doing programming in this area. And maybe we should integrate that into what we're doing in 2025 and 2026. And so the affiliate tiered one is more about trying to gauge where you're at as a Main Street program, and not necessarily we're going for accreditation.
And like Ben said, if you feel like you are working your way towards accreditation, which you should be, reach out to me if you think that that's going to be in the next few years, and we'll work with you more focused on that. We are building a lot more programming. You're going to see that in 2025 related to that capacity building, partners, funding, those sorts of things to provide services to a lot of our affiliates to help them in that journey to accreditation.
Mhm, mhm. So who should fill out this assessment? First, this assessment shouldn't just be filling out and scoring, shouldn't just be about one or two people doing this process and scoring it and then sending it to us. This truly should be a group activity with the board of directors. And so there's a couple of different ways to do that. You could score individually and then come together and talk about those scores and talk about where you may have differences in scores. Say, let's say you have a board member that scores you a 1 in an area and a board member that scores you a 4. This provides the opportunity to talk about, okay, what final score should we submit as part of this assessment? Or you could do this at a board meeting and score it as a group there. But really, the thing to remember with this process is it shouldn't just be the director. It shouldn't just be the board president or one or two people scoring this process and then sending it in. This should truly be a board activity because this allows one, more volunteer buy-in with it, and two, more ways for you to potentially engage in the future with some of this work and to become familiar with it, and three, to plan for future efforts.
Yeah, Ben mentioned, the board of directors. It could also be the organization committee, but it should be multiple voices filling out because everybody views the organization a little differently. And so how do we bring all of those viewpoints together into a true analysis, a true score, as you'll see in a bit, for those particular standards and indicators? I did want to back up that the assessment is divided into two sections. One are the actual self-assessment, those questions, and you're going to score yourself, and we'll get into those details in a minute. But then there's also documentation, which are supporting materials that support that score that you are submitting. And so it helps prove your work, prove your score to those reviewing it that aren't familiar with your community. So this is as we're getting into the assessment tool. These are the 6 standards in that box at the top that National Main Street has put together. And then the bottom is the grading and how that works. And so I wanted to dive into that just a little bit because, it is very subjective, of course. So on the grading score, though, they put some explanations to help you understand, kind of what are we thinking about as we're looking at these different indicators in the different standards. And so a score of 1 says that, hey, as an organization, you know what, we haven't even talked about this yet. It's maybe on our to-do list, but we just haven't had the time or the capacity to do it. And we want those truthful scores. We don't want you to put the score that you think we want to see. We want you to put the score of where you are at because that helps you evaluate your organization, but also then helps us evaluate your organization and then also recommend particular maybe services or trainings, but also helps us identify workshop topics, conference sessions, all of those things. So it's so important to be honest and truthful as you're doing this. So a 2 means that, okay, we've started working on it, but we've only done just a little bit and we need to put more effort into it. A 3 is satisfactory progress. We are meeting that standard or that indicator, and we're right there at the average. Number 4 is, we've gone above and beyond. We've achieved some success in this indicator. We're starting to lead in this area. And number 5 is we are outstanding and other programs could learn from us and replicate it. And so that's the scoring model. Think of that as you go through. And in the platform, they actually have a little place on each page as you're scoring yourself. You can click that grading scale just so you understand a little better, bring back to your memory that, and always remember you'll have that PDF in front of you. All right, baseline requirements. So this is what National Main Street put together just as those things that every Main Street program that's going through this assessment should be aware of and should be achieving. But these are also baseline requirements, remember, for accreditation. And as it says at the bottom, programs that do not meet these baseline requirements are not eligible for accreditation, but they may be designated as associate or affiliate tier. So at this point, you don't have to meet them all, but these are those baseline requirements for accreditation. A board of directors made up of representatives of the community. You do have to have a director to be an accredited Main Street program. You have your transformation strategies. You have action plans with transformation strategies identified. You have a dedicated budget. You've demonstrated support from your municipality. You're reporting your reinvestment statistics. You're a member of Main Street America and Missouri Main Street. And you have an annual report. Number 9 is a new addition. You have to have an annual report, infographic, press release, or other documentation to explain the progress of your program last year, which would be 2024. So again, those are baseline requirements for accreditation. But as every program on the call, every program in our tier systems, those are things to strive for.
Yep. So this is the documentation.
Go ahead. Yep.
Yes. So each one of these standards has indicators with documentation associated with it. So just for instance, if you look at community outreach indicator number 2 on there, the documentation for that one is to provide at least 2 different outreach examples of communication and engagement with the communities. And so these examples could be newsletters, brochures, online volunteer recruitment pages, communications action plan. And so these documentation helps you to score each section. It also can help you as you're going through it and like, wow, we're pretty low in this section here. It can actually provide examples of how to potentially meet that indicator in the future.
And we kind of talked about being honest with your scoring. You may also decide as you're discussing this as a board or as an org committee that, okay, maybe we have a low score. But when you go to pull your documentation, you're like, oh, actually, we're better than what we thought we were. And then, of course, the opposite can happen too. And there are been many times where we have gone to an on-site visit. And so the on-site visit is we meet with the board, we meet with the committees, we ask a lot of questions related to the scores. There have been many instances where we raise the score of the assessment based upon conversations and having the discussions and being on the ground. So, that's what the documentation is there to do, is to help provide you with jogging your memory about the work that you've been doing as a Main Street program and moving through that. So think about that. Okay. So as part of that documentation, trying to make it easier for our Main Street programs to collect and submit this information. So you also received, as part of your self-assessment, a spreadsheet that you can use to submit some of that documentation. And so, but I want to make it known that if you have other tools already created, let's say you do have a board document that shows attendance. You don't need to use this form then if you don't want to recreate it or put it in our form. If you've already got it and you're showing everything that's being required for that documentation, you don't need to put it in here. But sometimes, particularly newer Main Street programs, maybe don't have those documents created yet. And so this is just an easy way to do that. So I didn't put all of them on the screen, but here's some of those things. So this is actually what Main Street America requires. So this is probably something you don't collect already and track. So this is something that you would need to fill out. I also want to make the point that if you're doing this assessment now, let's say this is just your first year, the first year is going to be a little tougher because it's just new. It's going to take a little bit more time because it's new. But subsequent years, you've now got these tools created, and it's not going to change much from year to year. And so then you've got the tools to use and work on throughout the year and keep them updated, things like that. So it becomes easier. So again, if this is your first year, I'm sorry. The first year is a little more time consuming as you're learning your way through it. But realize that Ben and Julie and I are here to help you. If you're stumbling or have questions, just let us know. So here's another page. We ask for a committee list. And so the committee member's name, what committee or team they're on, and then what role they play in that. And then list at least 6 projects in 2024 and the committee or the Main Street point that project, that completed project fell under. And then this is a new one. You all have been doing this already, though. This is your volunteer hours. And so this already has formulas in it for you. And so you put in your total board hours from 2024, your total committee hours, your total event hours, and it's automatically going to figure out what the value of those hours are using the current value of volunteer hours, $31.16. It's going to give you a total of that. That's a great number to use as a Main Street program when you're talking to other partners and things like that. Okay, this is the Jillian, yes, we will have questions to a question time at the end. Thank you for asking that. This is the actual online assessment. This is what it would look like for you. It might look a little different just because I have an administrator login, but I pulled up Brookfield's. This is what it's going to look like when you get in there. You can see, I have to say I was playing in there. So Brookfield, Nile, how are you? I already filled out completed the overview, completed the baseline requirements. I was just testing the form. And so you can go back and edit those if I didn't answer them correctly. But you would go in and click down here where it says standard one. That would get you started. And you can go back and forth between standards. You don't have to finish everything, but this is what the platform looks like. If you don't have your login information, reach out to Ben or I, and we'll get that to you. We have the ability to reset that on our side. But if you're having any technical issues with the platform, maybe first reach out to us. But there is this little help section over here, and they have support tickets. Put in a support ticket. They'll get back to you very quickly. They want you to do that because maybe there is a bug in it. Last year was the testing year for bugs, and they got a lot of those fixed in the last year. But if you're having a problem or an issue, feel free to reach out to us. But if it's more technical related to the form, just click that help button and do a support ticket. All right, Ben. Oh, no, that's me. Sorry. I'm watching two screens. So this is back to your PDF. And so this is what it's going to look like in your PDF, but it matches the online platform. And so again, utilize this with your board or your org committee or your team that's going to be working on the assessment to be a tool. And anytime in this whole process you see LP, that stands for local program. CP stands for coordinating program, which is what we are as Missouri Main Street. And MSA stands for Main Street America. They use those abbreviations throughout, but sometimes by the time you get to the last page, you forgot what they meant. There's that little guide for you. Okay, so I talked about the on-site assessment. There is a group of 8 of those that will be doing that. And so we will take that self-assessment and documentation and review that. And then when we are on site, we'll meet with various entities, partners with the organization, city officials, district stakeholders, partner groups. And then we also do a tour of the district to have actually the board president leads that tour of the downtown district, showing us, various projects from the previous year, and even on these on-site visits, you can talk about what you're looking at for the future because it could be part of an action plan that you're still executing. But that's the on-site piece, and these are the communities that will be part of that. They're the weeks of February 10th and the weeks of February 24th. This should not be a surprise to anybody on this screen because we have shared that with you both at when we were in Washington, but also sent out emails earlier this week or late last week. I can't remember what, just giving you your date. So we'll be in Brookfield on February 10th, Chillicothe on February 11th, which is their accreditation review. Chillicothe is an accredited Main Street program. Trenton on the 12th, Excelsior Springs on the 13th, which again is an accreditation review. And then the week of February 24th, we'll be in Lebanon. Joplin's one of our newer accredited, so we're going to come back and make sure that they're still at that level as part of this visit. And then Lee Summit, verifying their accreditation. And then Thursday on the 27th, we'll be in Maryville. So those that are not accreditation visits, it just is a progress review. So it's taking the information from the assessment and then what we learn on the on-site visit and making recommendations to the organization from that outside perspective of, here's the things you're doing really well, capitalize on that. And then here are some opportunities or best practices that might be next for you as an organization and leadership.
So as Keith and I both mentioned, we just wanted to review this, that this is your opportunity as an organization to honestly review yourself. We don't expect perfect scores. And if we see a perfect score, that's going to be an indicator that you're just trying to give us a score that we're looking for. And so if you think you deserve a one or two in an area, please say that because that allows us the opportunity to potentially provide resources either at a workshop, at our conference, or in an organizational visit. And so use this time, use this process to honestly evaluate yourself and then utilize that free organizational service that you receive from us at Missouri Main Street Connection to help in those weak areas. All programs that have an agreement with us receive that free organizational service. This is us coming into the community to provide you resources on things like fund development, volunteer development, board training. And so as you go through this process, if you see that you're perhaps weak in one of these areas, please indicate that on there because it allows for us to come in and provide you resources so you become a stronger organization. And then use this year's review as a help and guide because again, the plan and the goal for your organization is to move to that associate, to move to that accredited tier if you're not there already, or if you are an accredited and associate organization, it is to use that organizational visit to prepare you for those areas that need improvement and fine tuning. And so again, use this process as a true barometer of where you are as an organization. So we wanted to revisit that timeline as well. So we shared those documents that we first went over in the first part of this presentation, November 11th through November 18th. And so if you didn't receive those, or if you need those emailed again to you, please reach out to Keith and I. We'd be happy to give those to you. Obviously, today is that webinar. We are recording it, and so you can share it with multiple members of the organization, or if you want to review parts of this, please feel free to. And then the actual self-assessment itself is due on Sunday, January 5th. And so just after the new year. And so this gives some time to have those discussions with the board of directors on what that scoring should be to accumulate and to put those materials together for the assessment itself. But as you're going through this, please reach out to Keith and I, especially if this is your first time. As Keith mentioned, sometimes the hardest one is that very first one as you're trying to get those materials together for the first time and you're not used to this process. Please reach out to us. There's our information. Many of you know how to get a hold of us, but please reach out to us because both Keith and I and Julie have done this process in the past year, and especially as you have questions, perhaps on the actual platform itself, because this is the second year using that platform. If you see a glitch, if you see a bug in there, please let us know or send a support ticket in. But we're going to open it up now for questions. So
Yeah, like
go
Ben said,
ahead.
Julie, Ben, and I have done this assessment. The three of us have been Main Street directors. I've been a Main Street board member also, and we know the process of going through this and kind of best practices. Like I said earlier, if this is your first year, it's probably going to be the hardest. But once you get beyond that, it becomes easier every year because some of the documentation you're just now aware of and doing that through the year. So I think Jillian is the one who asked if we're going to take questions, as you have a few. If you want to unmute yourself, Jillian, and ask your question, go right ahead.
Well, I think you explained it well, actually, throughout the rest of the presentation. So I think what I'd like to do is get together with our board, and we have a meeting already scheduled to review all of this. So if we have any more questions, then we'll reach out that way. So I don't want to waste your time now when we can probably figure it out.
Sure.
Thank you.
And Jillian, I wanted to remind you, I think we were going to get together and talk about a potential staff person. So I just wanted to ping you about that again too and see if we can.
Yes, sir. We are in progress of approaching this person with a contract and
Awesome.
with your correct wording. So we're very excited.
Awesome. kind of alluding to Jillian, the best way to do this is to email that PDF document to all of your board of directors and have them review it and score it. And then come back at your December meeting and talk about it. Just go through it item by item. What did you score? And if they're all pretty much the same, you all have the same viewpoint, then great, that's probably your score. But if there were some big differences, then talk about it. Talk through it. If somebody gave it a 2 and somebody gave it a 5, talk, why did you pick a 2 and why did you pick a 5? And then as a group decide what is that score. And then that's the score then you'll put in the platform and submit to us. And then take that list of documentations and divide it out amongst the various members and say, okay, you're going to do this one, you're going to do this one. Divide it out and it won't take that much time. All right, what other questions do you have? It's quiet out there this morning. Barbie, how are you doing? How you feel about it?
I'm, well, just overwhelmed because I don't know what I don't know.
What, your third week?
Yes. So, yeah, the more instructions I get, the better. That's why I wanted to come on here and
Yep.
listen and have it explained. And then I can go back and look at the documents and say, oh, okay, well, that makes sense.
Yep. And your board has been through this before, so they're probably actually going to be the ones to guide you. Yep. Okay. Thanks, Barbie.
Mhm.
Anyone else? All right. Well, if there aren't any other questions, you know how to reach us. We talked about Julie early on. Many of you have probably talked to Julie on the phone. She does check-in calls with communities. And so we're going to, once all the self-assessments are done, review those and talk about areas of service that we can provide. And so Julie will be the one leading that effort, helping us bring some of those services to you in those areas that you've identified as needing some help. So we're here to be part of the process and to help through that. So. All right. And those of you that have on-site assessments, several of you are on the call. Any questions there? I think we actually finished the schedules yesterday. I kind of gave you an overview in the email I sent, but we finished the schedule. So I'll get those sent out either today or tomorrow to you. So you'll know about that. And we look forward to coming to those communities and seeing the great work that you're doing. All right. If there aren't any other questions, have a great rest of your day and we'll talk to you later.